Gentlemen, we have an exceptionally special day today that we have the privilege of having not one, but two amazing men back to back here on Global Resources for Men. I know there are a lot of really bad jokes that can go there, but we've already spent the last hour having really ridiculous conversations.
So many bad jokes.
So many bad jokes. You guys have really missed out. I'm sorry that I didn't record it like for the last literal hour conversation that we've had.
Even just for us. That was
hilarious.
I
know, just for us. I mean, I really would have just for us like to have like, you know, rewatched that, and I literally laughed so hard. I was crying. Tears
we
were
both kind of have red, like puffy eyes.
Yeah. Honestly, it was amazing. So for those of you who don't recognize Nik Wood's phenomenal face, Nik is originally from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, but he's currently located in a little bit warmer place down in Mexico. So he's in La Playa, nearby. La Paz. Oh my gosh, playa. I was just thinking beach, right? Like, because we were talking about dolphins. You've gone kayaking the other day and doing amazing things. And Nik originally was actually going to be one of the speakers on the Global Men's Summit that I was going to do for sports, which has not yet happened because, you know, like life happens. But speaking of life, Nik has life athletics, which is a super cool thing. And but he's going to tell you more about that and his own personal story, talking a little bit first about Shazam. And you see all those cool figurines and how, you know, you can be both masculine and have figurines and dolls, and what it's like to experience like the wounded little boy inside of you.
They're action figures.
Figures. All right. But dolls, models, you know, like whatever. But Nik, take it away.
Take it away. All right. So yeah, where do I go? I feel like you just prompted me with like 8 of the things that we talked about before. So
Shazam. Should we start with Shazam?
Well,
people should know a little bit more about you first, I guess. It's like a foundation.
I guess.
I mean, just a little bit. There's so much to say.
Yeah, so I'm a coach, I'm a speaker, I facilitate men's groups. I do 3 a week. People from around the world attend. Each call will have people from many different countries, which is pretty awesome. I've been facilitating different forms of men's groups for years. It does tie into the Shazam story, but essentially it's work that I think is hugely important. So right now, my friend Di Manuel, who recently did a TEDx talk talking about what had him want to do this, and I started this group that we call Mentorship Mondays. And so we started it in Bali, and that group is still happening. I left a few people in charge, and they're running our format still. And then I facilitate 3 versions on Zoom every Monday for different time zones. So that's part of who I am. That's all free. So that doesn't really cover what I do professionally, but it's tied in to, like, the reason why I do it is because I have an idea for what I want the world to look like.
Yeah.
And that's one way that I feel I can maybe make a little difference. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. So, and from the standpoint of masculinity, people oftentimes look at you because of your sheer size, right? And because how tall are you again, my friend?
I am 6'6" or 2 meters. So I'm pretty tall.
Yeah.
Yeah. We look like we're the same size on the screen right now.
I know, I love it. I'm like, I'm 5'4", around $175, and you're like 6'6", and what, 250? Is that what you told me?
220.
220, yeah. All the muscles.
And so it's a bit of who I am, right? So I do coaching with people, and my work has been extending now to what I do with individuals, but on a global level.
Yeah.
Is where I'm challenging myself. And so I'm bumping into all kinds of internal fears of like, who the fuck am I? Can I swear in this?
Absolutely.
It's like, who the fuck am I to do that? Right. And so I wrote a post about imposter syndrome today on Instagram. And so that's a bit of who I am. So I can roll into the Shazam story if you want.
Sure, yeah, just like in the imposter syndrome, and, you know, like the wounded child, and like not thinking that you're enough for something, right? And so many people run across that
Yeah.
regardless of age.
So the Shazam story. So Shazam is a character from DC Comics. I like DC Comics. There's a couple Marvel characters off frame, but mostly DC is the
We're
thing.
promoting DC today.
Promoting DC. I think that sometimes I think that I made some life decisions that I regret because I'm not the obvious choice to take over DC's cinematic universe. Like they're not just not pounding down my door, but I think I could transform it into something extraordinary. Anyway, Shazam is a DC character who is essentially a young boy, depending on which version of the story. It's like 10 to 14, who is imbued with the powers of a few gods. And so when he says the word Shazam, he turns into an adult superhero figure, but he's really a young wounded boy internally. And so I have a bunch of little action figures, but one of the ones that I have here is the young boy version, Billy Baston, who turns into Shazam. And so I told you that I had a story around that. But yeah, I've often felt like that young boy internally, inside of a body where most people would project strength, solidity, security, and often internally I've felt not that.
Yeah.
And so I think that the work that you're doing here with men is hugely important because I think a lot of men feel like they have to present as strong all the time.
Yeah.
Or else.
Yeah.
Where I feel a little let off the hook with that, right?
Yeah.
You're sort of teasing because I have all this, but I am treated like I'm very masculine. Just I'm 6'6", full sleeve tattoo. I'm not trying to present a certain way, but I'm interacted with like I'm invulnerable.
Yeah.
And so it's been, so it's been an interesting experience nourishing that inner child. So yeah, I went through periods of abuse, went through periods of neglect. I was sexually molested when I was young. And when I got bigger than all of that, my fear was turning into the bully.
Right.
My father didn't know a lot of this, and he was pushed away. It's a big legal thing where he was accused of being dangerous to me. And so he had to fight in court for a few years to regain access. And when he did, I moved in with him. And there was a moment where for the first couple of weeks, I was just really happy to be out of the situation. Didn't tell him anything of what had been going on. My stepfather used to like choke me up against the wall and throw me around. It started during the period when my dad was pulled away. And so I was really happy to be out of there, but then my dad started trying to get me to do my homework and get me to go to sleep on time. So I've been either like abused and controlled or neglected.
Right.
Like that was the spectrum. So someone showing care was hugely challenging to me. And so we got into like, I started shoving him and we got into this fight in the kitchen. It was like two bucks, like at angles, just shoving. And then I realized that he wasn't trying to beat me because I was giving everything I had, right? And I was like 6'4" and 18 years old or something. And he wasn't trying to beat me. He wasn't letting me beat him.
Yeah.
Right. He was holding his space. And that was it's not the first healthy masculine, but I hadn't been exposed to it in a while.
Yeah.
And I burst out crying. I just like wept on his shoulders and just stopped at that point. And at that point, I just gave in. I went from failing out of school and being hugely depressed to getting straight A pluses, being one of the top students in the school, having tons of friends, dating the prettiest girl in the school and all that.
Yeah.
And I attributed it to a combination of my dad meeting me in that place, but also the fact that my dad was in a men's group. And so like I noticed a shift in him in the 3 years that I hadn't seen him. Right?
Yeah.
And so I started reading all the books that his men's group read, and I developed a really, really strong love for men showing up for other men.
Yeah, that makes
Right? I just think it's vitally important. I saw that my ex-stepfather didn't have that in his life. His father had been abusive to him. he was passing it on. I didn't want to pass on that wounding, and I thought my way out was to try to heal myself
Yeah.
as much as I could, and one way to do that was with other men. So
No.
that's part of who I am. And you said you wanted a vulnerable story, so that's.
I do. I really appreciate the vulnerable stories and being a really healthy role model for other men to be able to step forward with their own vulnerable stories, either within the group or within their own like close-knit groups at home.
Thank you.
To just
I'm the same age now that my dad was when he won that court battle. And so he brought that up last week. And like my dad attends one of the men's groups I run as a participant.
That's so cool.
Yeah, like I don't think he's listened to a single episode of my podcast. Like he does this for him. And that means more to me than if he was doing it for me, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Yes, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine what that, I mean, if my brother showed up in my group, or my mom showed up in like my women's group and was like engaging, not just to be there for me, but to be there for them and actually transcend those spaces, like that would be incredible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because part of the work that I do for the men's group, it's not just for my male friends and the hope for humanity. It's because like I have an almost 6-year-old nephew, and I have 2 brothers, and I have 2 dads, and like creating a world that will hopefully be better for them, right? To create a space where they can have those questions and have the support that they need.
It's so vitally important. We talked about this last night in one of the men's groups. And so one of the things that we built into this system is, because for some people, speaking in front of other people is terrifying.
Yeah.
And so a way to, sure. And so a way to break the ice is we start every meeting saying like, hi, this is my name, this is where I'm from, and this is why I'm here tonight. Just a short little presencing of purpose. So like for some guys, they're like, well, it's what I do on Mondays. And so even there, I asked them to say like, this is what I do on Mondays. I'm choosing to do, like to drop into presence with it.
Right.
But one of the guys had 2 of his sons behind him playing on the couch. He's like, that's why I'm here. And
powerful.
Like this idea that, what's that?
I said mad respect.
Yeah. And it's this idea that as men, like I have like my unpopular, like if the thing that I'm afraid to have people hear me say, I'm going to say right now, I have an issue with the war against the patriarchy. Now I get what people are talking about. And it's the idea that like the world needs more healthy fathering. And the word patriarchy comes from the Latin word for father.
It does.
And I think that it's more a competitive, Sam Keen talks about this in the book Fire in the Belly. It's more of like a corporatism than a patriarchy, right? Certain organizations benefit. Men were cannon fodder. And so now to be like branded as the reason why everything's wrong is hard for me, and I think for a lot of men. I don't think it helps the conversation. And it's important as men now to say, we're not to blame for history, but we're responsible right now, right? To live into the world that I want to live in right now, I have to act like I'm responsible. And so for me, a big part of being a man is that. And it's why I do the men's group. I don't have any kids of my own yet. But the idea of rippling into the world through the impact that we can have each session, and that I see, because week after week, guys come back and we'll talk about how they had the deepest connection with their mother, their father, their wife, girlfriend, kids that they've ever had. Like that's so important for me.
Yeah. No, I understand. That's really beautiful. And I understand your concern as well, because as a woman holding space for men, you know, like honestly, and saying like, I advocate for men's rights. And what does that look like? And the different assumptions that people make when they hear me say that, they might not necessarily go to like, I provide space. I advocate for the right for men to be vulnerable without shame and invalidation. That's a right that every human being should get to have. And the Me Too movement being very important, but like any movement, there being extreme aspects to it, and the extreme aspects to it and the immature reactions, which some people call toxic, creates dysfunctional spaces for other people. And the importance of all human beings having the right to have a voice and to be able to grow and be transparent about their experiences, and not being shutting down because you're like, you as a man can't talk about your sexual experience that you had of sexual abuse because this is my time to talk about how men abused me. And it's like,
And it's not just childhood abuse, right? So a lot of men have been abused as children, but a lot of men, I remember when Me Too, like there was a day where it really hit. That first day when Alyssa Milano's post went viral and like stuff was just exploding. I
yeah,
remember a lot of male friends messaging around privately and being like, this is really good. And I've had women hit me. I've had women throw knives at me, pots at me, plates, right? And we can't talk about it. And women don't like the tough thing. And here's another possibly unpopular opinion if misquoted or misunderstood, but the talk about equality, right? For masculine, feminine, male, female, men, women, equality. Men don't get to just blame other people. Not around other men, usually. Whether that's right or wrong, no. And so the idea that, like, I've heard a lot of women say this, or stories of women saying this, of, well, men have been bad to me or us, so what do you expect? Of course we're going to do this. And it's like, I get it, and that's not okay.
yeah, it's a hard thing. And so vulnerably, I can say that when I was younger, when I was like 15, one of the first guys I dated, he cheated on me. And I got this dysfunctional idea that all men would cheat because he had, right? And so I was just like, well, I'll just do whatever I want and I can cheat on whoever I want because they're going to do it to me anyways. So none of it matters.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
And that's a really dysfunctional thing. But I was young.
and it makes complete sense.
And it was immature, and I didn't have the healthy role models to look to necessarily to be able to guide me through that as a teenager, right? And there's different times when like I've been raped, I've been sexually assaulted, I've had, and growing up as a strong female, in these, how you're supposed to move through the world and be powerful, that it wasn't okay necessarily for me to say that, like, oh, like to even think about it in my mind that, oh, somebody's sexually harassing me, because I'm in charge of my reaction to what somebody else says to me. And so it just didn't even register that, like, oh, that I was being sexually harassed, or that like there was like an assault if I was already engaged with somebody, because somebody's like, well, you're being promiscuous anyways, so if somebody does something to you like beyond, like, because you said no but you were already in the middle of something, then it's on you. And so there's like all these dichotomies there, right? But at some point we have to own where we're at and say, like, I don't agree that this is right. I didn't like it when this happened to me, and so I'm not going to create that situation and put that on somebody else. Like, as a woman saying that. Sorry. No, it's fine. Just saying, like, because you were saying, like, oh, like a woman said X about men, and so I'm going to do it to men. And my point is, you at some point you have to say, well, I didn't like experiencing that, so I'm going to create a safe space and communicate better and have healthier boundaries, so somebody can be in a different space over here. I'm not going to wrong target because this person over here did something shitty, and this person who might be like a totally great guy, an upstanding citizen, I'm not going to wrong target over here and say that this person is going to automatically do something awful because this person did over here. It's not okay for us to blame an entire group of people because a select few have done something that's non-ideal. It's not okay. I mean, like, that's why I host a men's group. Why would I, as a person who's been raped and sexually assaulted, support men if that was like something that I carried out into the world? So that's my way of trying to role model, be like, hey, like, own your experience, do your best to heal from experience, and don't project on everybody else and try and put them in a box. So there's my soapbox. You can go now.
Love it. No. I mean, you basically said what I was. What's that?
So I was like, I get it. Your consideration of people hearing something, and especially out of context, because as a woman, I keep wondering, like, okay, like, when is some, like, another woman, especially someone that's quoted, like, here's another box, a feminist, right? Because there's a wide range of people, and how you look at that is going to say, like, oh, well, they've had their turn. And I'm just like, well, if we truly believe in equality, then everybody gets a voice to express their personal experience and how they're trying to navigate it, right? To me, that's what equality is. We don't have to
that
like somebody
idea
else's
of turns. The pendulum of, like, really having the same thing but gender flipped, I don't think serves humanity.
Yeah.
But the question comes down to what you were saying there is, who do you choose to be?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I start the men's groups with is, it's a men's group. We're all men here, so now what? What kind of man do you be? There's no one right way to man. And so that can be really difficult as someone who identifies as, like, straight. I was speaking to a gay friend of mine about this theory that I developed, that some of the fabulousness that's sometimes associated with gay men was because they were owning their sexuality. And I was noticing that I was almost embarrassed or nervous showing attraction or being attracted to women. The idea of the male gaze. It's like, well, every gaze that I have is male. So, like, what is, like, now I get it. And the languaging, like, hits, like, the people who don't care still don't care, but the people who care sometimes care too much.
Right.
And
And
so,
how
yeah.
hypocritical is it that women can totally, excuse the phrase, but, like, I fuck a guy and it's fine. But if a man does the same thing to a woman, if it's the wrong woman, then that in and of itself can practically be considered sexual harassment for some, because of the energy and the intent behind it. I don't personally agree with that, but I hold, like, strong boundaries, and I feel very secure in myself and how I sexually engage with the world.
So just to finish the thought, what this guy was like, he heard me.
Yeah.
And this was a man who's a professor at a university, and just to give him a little bit more qualifications. And so he heard my theory, and he said, yeah, I agree with you in part. And he said, to live as a gay man, you had to consider every part of your existence. How do you speak? How do you dress? How are you going to date? Like, who are you going to date? Where are you going to party? Like, everything is considered. Whereas a lot of straight men live a very default life. We get to wear black tops, gray tops, or navy blue, cut our hair a certain way. If not, we're perceived as other.
Interesting.
And there's a fear of being perceived as other, of losing the man card.
Right.
Right? Sort of teasing that, like, oh my God, I've got toys up there. Now, it's on purpose, right? I could angle the camera anywhere.
Yeah.
It's
love that they're there.
It's disarming for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because it's unexpected. I can't do much with my hair anymore. So, so how do I express a difference?
Right.
And I think it's really, really difficult, because we're living in a world that says how men have been is bad. And if men are any way other than they've been, that's bad.
Yeah. It's a difficult time for men.
Right? So it's not like, oh, poor us, like, pity us.
No.
But it's to open up the conversation of, like, he brought up feminism. What was really interesting is, in that book that I referenced earlier, Fire in the Belly, we're going through that one again. I read that years ago. We're going through it again for my men's group's book club. So it's a little fresher. there's an inquiry of what does it mean to be a man now,
Yeah.
right? If men can be like this and women can be like that, we're only giving ourselves 50% of the available range of expression.
Yeah.
And so men are supposed to be a certain way and women are supposed to be a different way. Women are supposed to carry the emotional load. Well, it's not working that way anymore. It never really worked
Yeah.
that well. But what I find often with other groups, and I remember taking Women's Studies 101 at school, and it wasn't what I expected. What I wanted was that. I wanted the woman's version of, okay, well, now what are we?
Right.
Right? But what it was a study of the oppressed. And it was a fascinating window into how one way that women see themselves is as the oppressed. I never considered that, right? My privilege is so pervasive that I only notice it when it's not there,
Interesting.
right? I don't want to lose it though. I just want everyone else to have that feeling.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that sentiment for sure.
Right? But it was so fascinating because we were studying people of different colors, of different sexual orientations, able-bodied versus disabled. Like, it wasn't just what does it mean to be a woman, right? So it was this huge umbrella, and it was all reactive.
Yeah.
It wasn't creative. And so the myth that women provide this empathic, creative voice, I think women can, women in their power do, but more often than not, what women are doing is a gender flip version of what they didn't like,
Yeah.
which is this domineering, competitive force. And most men don't want to fight with women. It's not a battle that feels good,
No.
right? It's like I'm 6'6". If someone your height comes to fight me and I win, I'm an asshole, male or female,
Yeah.
right? If I lose, I'm an asshole who's being laughed at, right? And so that's like a physical thing. But if the same thing extends, right now it's not any fun to engage in these conversations most of the time. It doesn't feel safe most of the time. And so the idea of, okay, well, how do we create a future together doesn't get to be discussed because there's not safety.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is
Like
what we're trying to create here.
my
So
mom's super strong, super powerful. She went through a tough relationship that led to that period that I was talking about, but
yeah.
she's always been hugely capable and powerful. In some ways, I think she's a genius. And so for me, it's hard to see women who don't just see themselves as that naturally. I just thought that was normal.
That makes sense. That's what was modeled for you.
And so while I have my own issues with her sometimes,
Sure.
right? She's trying to play both roles and whatever. Um, that's what I think is there. And so it's challenging because so often it feels like the conversation. So I plan on either writing a book or articles about this, or maybe both. But I feel that society in general, humanity, is operating the same way that an individual does when the individual doesn't have clear goals and is carrying trauma.
That makes sense.
And the hardest thing to do with an individual like that is to not just shut them down and not have them guide the conversation or take over the conversation. They can guide it, right? But not dominate it, because then they're just stuck in their loop.
Right.
So having the least healthy person in the dynamic, the most wounded person in the dynamic, be the one dominating the narrative is challenging, even on a one-on-one situation, right? Now,
Yeah.
societally, how this turns out is people want their pain heard and acknowledged, seen. And it doesn't work to just keep rolling around in the pain of the past, right? It doesn't clear it. And it needs to be heard. And so at no point do I want to shut anyone up, but what I want is actual healing.
Yeah.
And that's a very difficult thing to do, even with just individuals. And then to do that societally is even harder. So I think all we can do is, well, I don't think all, I'm building a system like that is a version of my coaching program, but for the planet. And so what I hinted before, that it's this daunting exercise. I don't really know how to start. I don't know how to build it technically. If anyone here knows how to build systems online, reach
I'm sure
out.
there's somebody in this group that does.
Yeah,
I would be shocked if there wasn't.
I have a fairly clear idea of what I want to have built, and it leads into. So Brian Tracy says this thing that's become a key part of my philosophy, which is that people who are unhappy and unsuccessful in general or in an area are thinking two things, just on repeat. They're thinking the same two things just over and over again. The form might change slightly, or like the shell, the mask of it, but they're same two things. Happy, successful people, a different set of two things. So it's really formulaic. Now this is oversimplistic, just by, definition, like this is a simplified version, but it's a powerful model. And when I first read it, I saw all of my life in the unhappy, unsuccessful model. I thought I'd done a lot of work, but yeah. And I think globally, we fit into that model. So unhappy, unsuccessful people. You ready?
I'm ready.
People, cool. People who are unhappy and unsuccessful, think, what don't I like and whose fault is it?
Yeah.
What don't I like and whose fault is it? Over and over and over again. I don't like this because that. I'd done so much work that my version of it was I blamed myself and called it responsibility.
Yeah.
Right? But it was still the same thing. What don't I like, and it's my fault because of this. So formulaically, that just brings us to the same place, unhappy, unsuccessful. Right now I'm talking success in a healthy way, because we can also be like, well, we were successful in being something, right? But that's not what I mean.
So
like
how do the guys help to get out of that space? Do you have recommendations that you'd like to share?
Sure, switch to the other model. Catch yourself, bring awareness to it.
Yeah.
Right? It really, it's not anything more than that. So the other model, but like if we look, let's just pause here for a second. Unhappy, unsuccessful, what don't I like, whose fault is it? If we look at the last year and a half, last year, whatever, this global pandemic hit. And I immediately was excited. I thought, cool, this is something that could unify humanity. Right? This is something where it doesn't matter how rich you are. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, your nationality. This is affecting everyone. It's not just some flesh-eating disease in a jungle somewhere that we can ignore and like make commercials about it, but ignore those too, right? Yeah. This is hitting everybody, right? So not that I wanted anyone to get sick, but I thought, well, cool, this could potentially unify humanity. We could find ways to cooperate with each other. No.
Sorry.
No. It's all right. It turned into a different thing. It turned into the China virus, or turned into like, how do we blame someone? Whose fault is it? Right? The Wuhan lab. Like, maybe, we don't know. Will we ever know? Right? But we're trying to say, like, we don't like this. Whose fault is it? Versus happy, successful people think, what do I want? How do I get it?
It's an interest. Yeah. I mean, like there's a lot of people really struggle to make that connection, to really think about, to know themselves well enough to discern what they want.
It's harder.
And how to get it in a real way. I posted our link in the off chance that anyone might want to join us here to expand the conversation. So we'll see if Alex pops on and anybody else.
Cool. Yeah, I figured that's what you're doing. I don't know how this works. I've never done a live through Zoom before. I've done through other mediums, and I joined someone live on Facebook last week. I didn't realize that I had to do it from my phone, so that was technically confusing. So this is fun. But yeah, so what do I want? How do I get it? And it's fascinating to watch how much resistance people have to that. Whenever I share this, the first reaction from a lot of people is, well, that's just selfish. Well, I couldn't do that. What do I want? Well, no, I need to be worried about us. Well, cool. That's still what you want, right? Like if you want to come from a we, that's great, but own it as your desire.
That's a really interesting point, because I actually had a conversation with somebody who he was born here, but he was raised in Australia, and he's here right now in the US. And we really struggled in points of contention because of how different culturally Australia is from America. And he was talking about Australia being more about the group and America being more about individuals. And
Sure.
And Americans really struggling to come together. And so, and you're Canadian, so you can bring like a whole nother like level of a country perspective.
I think both of them are weird. Yeah.
And if Alex pops on, like he's from the UK, so hopefully he'll pop on and get to give a conversation piece there. But who knows?
So it's his fault that we're all
yeah,
spread
we'll
out
just
over
be
the place.
like, yeah, you're from England or whatever. It's obviously your fault.
Colonial bastards.
That's right, colonial bastards. But I just thought it was really.
I'm half Spanish. It's not much better though.
Right, but he was talking, and he was just saying about how, for him, he's always wanting to go above and beyond for everybody else.
Right.
I hear this a lot from mothers, especially in any country. And then it always reminds me of the conversation you have when you're on an airplane and you're like, put the mask on next, like the kid first, right? So that, like, or put it on yourself first instead of the kid, right? Because I was like, you know what I mean? It's like if
it's hard to even say in the correct way, because you want to put it on the kid first. Yeah, I get it.
Right, you want to put it on the kid first, but if you put it on the kid first and then you die, let's say like the plane crashes and your 4-year-old is like trapped and they can't push the seat or whatever, and the plane is, and they're stuck and the plane's going in the water, then what happens? The kid still dies, just to give a frame of reference. And so it's just like, for people, if you're not focusing on yourself and with a growth mindset and giving yourself enough sleep, because so many entrepreneurs especially are not sleeping enough. There's this idea that it's almost like a badge of honor, like the least amount of sleep that you get.
It's romanticized, right? Yeah.
Right. Like, how much can you push yourself to be successful? And like, only if you're getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and doing all the things, it's like, are you worthy or something,
Yeah.
And I found that interesting, because there's a certain amount of selfishness that is required for survival. And if you're constantly pouring from an empty cup and you tell me that what you really want to do is serve others to the highest possible level you can, then by definition, you have to take yourself to the highest level that you can in order to serve others to the highest level that you want to. And that's what I think people forget.
Well, we come from a place, whether religious or not, where a lot of the religious figures in the world, but let's use like Judeo-Christian, like, well, I don't know if Judeo-Christian works, but Christianity, he was nailed to a tree, and that's seen as an accomplishment, right? Like the suffering, dying for our sins. And I'm like, I'd rather he didn't do that.
Or the Buddhism and flogging himself, like the floggings that happened in the starvation, and and I mean, personally, I really like Buddhism in general. It's one of like my more favorite religions out of the religions that are out there. But like there's a lot of self-sacrifice that happens, and I think that makes it more difficult. And then people take it and they spin it.
The challenge that I have is that none of these systems have created what they were advertised to create. So if we just look at what is the output of these concepts, right? We don't have this utopic like heaven on earth. We never have. So maybe the answers are somewhere else, right?
Right.
I don't think that humanity isn't capable of it, but I do think that if we approach it from a like baseline scientific curiosity model, if that's not working, we need to come up with a new hypothesis. And I think that it's a mixture. And so much of my philosophy is like maybe or yes and like, and so I think it's important to put on your mask and put the mask on the kid, right? Like it's important to do both.
Right.
And so what do you want? How do you get it? Owning I actually matter here is vitally important, right? So much of the world says like, I want the whole world to feel lit up, right? But they forget that they're part of the world. So we've got a whole bunch of people wanting everyone else to be lit up, but refusing to be lit up, so no one wins.
Yeah, it's kind of like judgment too, because people are like, oh, I don't want to be judgmental. And it's just like, well, you have to judge whether or not it's safe to walk across the street. You know, like and so people put a
We
lot
just
of
are
things.
judgmental.
Well, there's
Even if we judge someone favorably, we're being judgmental.
right. And so there's just like this negative connotation there to certain words, right? Instead of just being discerning about like, what does that word mean and how do I apply it to my life, and what's the positive intent, and what are the boundaries that we're utilizing within each context, right?
I like to say that I'm driven by purpose, not procedure,
Nice.
right?
Yeah.
So how we get there, I don't really care, right? I do have opinions, and I do think there's certain methodologies that work better than others. But if we get there, we get, what's that?
And integrity.
Sure. Yeah, totally. And, right, so many people get all nitpicky at the beginning. It's kind of like Google Maps or Waze will give you multiple options, and both are like within a minute apart, and people don't start driving because they want to argue which one to take. Right? No, this road is better. This route is better. No, what are you?
I like the scenery better on this one.
And that can be valid, right? And the other person can say, well, we need gas and we need to go this way, whatever it is.
Right.
But I just want to get there with a full tank and a smile on my face. So even if I do a loop and it takes longer, like that can be a win. So what's the purpose?
Right. And listening to your intuition is part of that too, I think, because sometimes it's just like, you don't know why you choose a certain way that you do, but then something remarkable happens along that particular route that you would have missed out on had X or Y or Z not happened. So
it often happens to me.
Yeah. So for instance, today, I don't usually let my truck run close to empty. Having traveled across the US so many times, I usually try and fill it up at half a tank.
Yeah, me too.
But today, for whatever reason, I've just been distracted by a lot of things, and it was like on E, like it clicked on like low fuel. I was like, oh my goodness. And I was on my way to go see the horses, and I wasn't familiar with the area that I was in. And so I called up my friend and his horses I was going to work with, and I was like, hey, do you have a gas station that's close to your place? And she said, yes, go this way. So I went that way. And then listening to my intuition, there was these two guys that there were country folk, you know, and some people might have felt uncomfortable, and they started talking to me, and they're like, oh, you're a long ways from home. But like my intuition was like, oh, like they're fine, like they're good people, whatever, it's not a big deal. Even though like one of them
wasn't deliverance,
was being very clear that he was very attracted to me, but I'm like, it's fine, it's not a big deal. And so we were laughing, and they were being kind, and they recommended a lot of places for me to check out, like good people in the area. And so I chatted with them for X period of time, just the right amount of time, because then I left and I drove down a country road, and there was something interesting walking across the road. And so I was like, what is that? And then I was like, oh, it's a turtle. And I love turtles. It's very exciting. And so I immediately stopped my truck, and I put on my flashers, and I jumped out of my truck, and I picked up the little turtle. And at first, you know, he put his head in, and picked him up, and then we got about halfway across the road, and he starts putting his legs out and be like, don't eat me. And then I put him down gently on the other side of the road where I think he would have liked to have gone. And then I turn around, and sure enough, there was a truck, big black truck, like barreling down the road, that totally would have smushed him. But had I not been open to talking to those people and listened to my intuition, the turtle, I wouldn't have seen the turtle because it wouldn't have been crossing the road yet, and the turtle would have died.
Yeah.
So by listening to my intuition and talking to strangers, I saved a life, even if it was just a turtle.
Turtles are important. I like turtles.
Turtles matter.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, I had a similar experience the other week, but it really is. I think intuition can be tapped into when we're okay.
It's definitely harder when we're in a space of fear or reactivity or defensiveness.
Or exhaustion or whatever is coming up.
Whatever is coming up. Absolutely. It's a lot. It gets lost in the noise.
What I talk about often is safety and permission. So with the men's groups that I run, with the coaching that I do, like a really baseline thing is how to create safety. Now, a lot of people talk about safety in a way of like, oh, snowflakes, or like trying to control the world, or don't ever talk to me about this. As opposed to what you're talking about here of it's safe to go into the discomfort.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen to you. So it's not avoiding the discomfort because you can't.
No.
Right? Like there's no way to create, to pad every wall in the world so that there isn't like a hard edge to bump into.
For sure.
Right? And so, but yeah, with the men's group, there's no coaching, no advice giving.
Right? That's really great. And I really appreciate that because, for instance, like in the men's group here, the big deal for me and in my women's group as well is that there is no shame or invalidation allowed. Oh. And if I find that people are doing that, then we try to have a conversation to lift that person up first. And if they're not responsive to that, then I will just delete them from the group. Like, you're not in a space to be in this group and be safe. And happy to give you resources for other people in your evolution, but the space is to be safe for everybody to vulnerably share and, you know, be supported by other men. And if you're not here to support, then it's not the right group for you.
I think it's so important. I approach it a slightly different way, but it gets to the same place. A friend of mine, Rick Smith, he came up with this term. I think he came up with it, but I got it from him, of the tender edge. And so I ask everyone to listen as though people are sharing from the tender edge of their current capacity to be vulnerable.
I like that.
The point of what we're up to in the group is to live wholehearted lives.
Yeah.
So Brene Brown talks about how the pathway to being wholehearted is vulnerability. Mm-hmm. But it's not, I needed to make it really clear at the beginning. And so now we don't have an issue with it. It's not meant to be competitive. Because sometimes it's like, I've seen this happen in the world where people try to share, like just to bleed all over the page. Right? There have been waves of this on Facebook, on Instagram, where people are just sharing every wound. And it stopped feeling like it was to live a wholehearted life and to be courageous, and more of it was to shock and impress. Right?
Yeah.
So it's not the tender edge anymore. And so what we're listening as people are sharing from the tender edge. For some people, that is like the typical version of vulnerability is like, oh, I'm having a really hard time and things are rough. And we've had people come in and say that they thought of taking their own lives like the day before or that morning.
Wow.
Right? So, okay.
That's definitely the tender edge.
Sure. The tender edge can also be, I've had the greatest sales week of my life, the best sex I've ever had, and everything's coming out Nik. And if I'm met with, why are you always bragging? Why are you like coming from ego all the time?
That's a really solid point, Nik. I'm really glad that you brought that up because I've definitely heard people and then describe that as something that they struggle with, that they want to be able to celebrate their wins, but they're afraid that people are going to think that they're arrogant, narcissistic, or like just bragging in general. And people should be able to fully express themselves and have joy and be like, I won, like today I kicked ass at what I did. And it was fucking phenomenal. And like, how great is that to be able to celebrate that with other people, you know?
And so many people have nowhere to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like the fact that And for some people, the tender edge is just showing up.
Yeah.
Right? Just if I don't say that, my brain will be like, finish this. Yeah. So like, and
Yes.
and so many people have nowhere to celebrate their wins.
Yeah.
Celebrate victory. Right. And it is baffling to me because human beings aren't that fucking complex. We all essentially want the same things. We want love, belonging, respect. We want to feel connection, right? Occasionally stroked on the head and told that we're good.
You want to be heard. People want to feel safe. They want to feel like they have a voice, that people like accept them, and like that they have value and worth. But unfortunately, a lot of people are looking externally for worth instead of like intrinsically giving themselves and assigning them worth.
Well, this is where we overcomplicate the simplicity. Right? So years ago, a friend of mine said that there was always things that she wished that she'd heard a man say to her. So I said, well, that's interesting. Cool. How about we create a container where I won't act on any of the things. I won't take it personally, but you tell me what you want a man to say and I'll say it. And at first she was kind of baffled. Amazing experience. And then I shared that with a friend and she's like, well, that sounds amazing. So I started asking female friends, what would you like to hear said to you? And I recently made a recording, an audio of affirmations. And I've shared it with a bunch of my friends and shared what it is. It's a scripted audio of affirmations of me saying, like, you're amazing, you're so, like, fairly generic things. The number of voice messages that I got back from people crying, saying, thank you. I really needed to hear this. It's like beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time.
Yeah.
Where like a scripted audio recording is more connection and love than they've gotten in a long time. And these are people doing the work and we're out there reading all the books, listening to all the podcasts, like knowing these things. And so, yeah, I don't really have an end point to that. It's more just, I'm going to make some more audios and curious what men want to hear and whether hearing me say it would have a similar effect on men or whether a woman's voice. And I'm going to be playing with both. Some friends of mine want to play with that.
I'd be happy to jump in there. People seem to tell me a lot that they like my voice.
Cool. Yeah. But it's so important to hear these things.
Huh?
It's so important to hear these things, I think.
It really is. It really is important. I didn't realize that I was looking to everyone else to assign value to me until just last year. And I just turned 41 on May 25th. Like, I had like this major just like breakdown shortly after my 40th birthday. And for my 40th birthday, I had given myself the best gift ever, which was deciding to let go of all my limiting beliefs across my dynamics and to step into my power. And nice. I just decided. Like that's what real power is for any of us, is for us to be able to take control of our minds and to be able to change them, regardless of the world around us and any people. Despite
I was so terrified. Sorry.
No, you're fine. What was that?
I was so terrified just before I turned 40. I was in this relationship that was really hard on me. And sort of what we were talking about before, like she would let herself do things that if we gender flipped them would just be seen as grotesque and awful.
Yeah.
But because she was small and cute, it was like, oh, right, she's just that. But like I was like twitchy, scared. And so she was so jealous also that I didn't even like trust like being around female friends. I was afraid that it would impact them.
Yeah.
And so I had a 50-person men's group for my birthday, for my 40th birthday. I had 3 other facilitators and stuff. It was amazing.
That sounds incredible.
We had a fire burning and like, yeah. And then I went off on my own and climbed a volcano. So that's how I turned 40.
That's epic.
I was in Bali at the time.
Yeah, no, that seems appropriate. That seems like a very Bali thing to do.
Yeah. But I had another thought from what you were saying. It's so important, I think, for us to realize that as a species and as individuals, we don't know where we're going. Most people have no idea. So many people are in such reaction to other people, giving other people the locus of control, other people's opinions, and often they're not even accurate. Right? Most of the world reacts to me like I'm fucking awesome, and I've been terrified of judgment. Whereas what I get is so many messages of people saying, "Hey Nik, thank you for sharing this. Thank you for that time when we spoke." I've had people that I met randomly having lunch by myself, and they were the next table over, and we started chatting, and they start taking notes. And 6 months later, they tell me that that changed their life. And I walked around like I was a useless piece of shit. Right? So like knowing that the evidence doesn't back up the internal,
I understand.
right? So much of that's been worked out of my system now, but I have so much heart for it because I watch people who don't have that fire hose of positivity that I was ignoring.
Yeah.
And I'm like, good Lord, like, bless you. Because, yeah, it's not a competition. What's harder or easier?
No, not at all.
But people are struggling. And again, we just want such simple things.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we were here to do a task, you and I. You were going to interview me, and we're going to have, but like both of us were like, oh, this is just a delightful conversation. So we spent like an hour before we started recording just laughing.
Yeah. It's what was needed in that
And
moment. Like just letting it be what it is, like just being fully present and just being like, yes, like there's an agenda, but it doesn't matter. Like we can just be human and that be enough.
I've had to track that so often my interactions are, what can I give and do? Now I manage it so that I make sure that I interact with people who meet a certain criteria on a regular basis, which are they amplify me and allow me to amplify them, and my nervous system feels better around them.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when there's bonus. Just like spontaneously meet someone who's, yeah, just has me in hysterics. So I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I am kind of sad that I didn't record it.
Yeah.
To laugh about later. But we'll just have to talk again and
we'll just have to laugh again.
We'll just have to, God,
darn it. Demanding. Did we cut, like, I don't know what like the timing is. I don't know like where we're at.
We've been live for about an hour and we've spoken for 2 hours straight.
Cool. I had a 2-hour client call right before that, so doing good. All right, 4 hours of talking.
4 hours of talking. It's totally fine. Yeah. What time is it there?
Almost 3 o'clock.
Almost 3 o'clock. Okay, that's right. At least we're not.
And my next thing just canceled. I just got a message.
Oh. Okay.
So I'm doing great. Let's keep going. No. Is there anything that we want to make sure that we touch on? Sorry, I'm clicking back into host mode. I have a podcast.
It's totally fine. So I think this is a great part of what we do, because the interviews that I do with people, it's really important to me that it's just like two friends sitting down for a cup of coffee or whatever, and that there's no set amount of coffee, tequila, whatever.
I don't think either of those things. Oh my God, it's like you don't even know me, the person I've talked to twice.
And yeah, so I don't like to look at it as being too like a power dynamic at all. It's just two people on an equal platform, so it can go either way. So for you, in regards to the men's group, is there anything else that you feel like, I mean, we've touched on a tremendous amount in the last hour talking, but specifically for men, that you see men struggling with in your men's groups, in the coaching that you do, that you feel like could be relevant, or any resources or like key advice that you could give the guys in the group?
Oof.
I know that was like 3 different things.
Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to find the Venn diagram intersection point, but for a lot of the men, they don't feel like there's anywhere that they can actually share. So I have to watch myself, because I do 3 of those calls every week, every Monday, because we called it Mentorship Monday. So they all have to be on Monday until we rename it. So I have tons of that space. Plus, it's how I operate. And so I have to catch myself, because for a lot of men, they have nowhere else to share what's alive and real, and to not be judged, to not be immediately corrected or given some sort of, well, this is how you fix that.
Right.
Right. And it's been magnificent, because the number of people who said that it's transformed their relationships because now they can sit and listen to someone else and not immediately try to fix them, and how grateful those people are. And so I think one of the challenges for men is that we think we need to be doing something to be of value. Right?
Yeah.
I've heard it described like the general dynamic where the man pays for dinner. Some men do it because they want to. Some men do it because if they don't, they're like, well, what am I doing here? What good am I? The idea of like, my company is of value.
Yeah.
Isn't something that a lot of men are trained into feeling. Right. And so just being able to show up and speak to another man or a woman and just be is hugely threatening to a lot of men. And so I think that's important. What I do with my coaching is we create a vision that I call a horizon goal. So as far as you can see from where you are, what would be it? And then who is the you that would be living that life? And what's different? And can you start living as that person, as your horizon self now? And so I don't always speak that into the men's group because they're separate, but I try to live from that as much as possible.
That's really beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that'd be my thing. I've had clients rename it, call it whatever you want. I've had clients who just said, if I was being that guy instead of my horizon self, and all these micro decisions started to shift. And he went from not being able to like afford lunch to creating a multi-million-dollar business.
Wow.
Right? Because he was able to tap into that version of himself. And yeah, like a bunch of stories that are like that. And it's not all like 0 to like multi-millions, but sometimes it's like transforming their bodies, finding the relationship that they want. It's like, are you being who you would need to be living the life that you want?
Yeah.
And if you're not, maybe start there.
Why not? Why aren't you if you're
Why
not?
not?
What the heck?
Well, no, because that question spins people into, most people are historians, are scholars of their history and their problems. And they can tell you why not all day. It doesn't do any fucking good.
No, it doesn't, because then you're stuck in your stories of your past instead of looking at like, where are you in the now and what steps can you take to meet your goals in the future, and really acknowledging how much of that future self you actually are right now.
Sure.
Because a lot of people just don't look at themselves in that way. You know,
I don't advocate people ignoring or bypassing that stuff. But what I find is that as people start focusing on the future that they want and start walking towards it, anything that's actually stuck to them will show up. And a lot of it isn't stuck to them and will just drop down to the floor and stay there. But the stuff that's stuck, it's easier to deal with when it's identified.
100%, yes.
Right? So either way, it's like forward, onwards, Excelsior.
Excelsior.
Ever upwards. It's
oh,
a Marvel reference.
Mm-hmm. That's funny. That's why I was like, oh.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
It's one of the 3 words. There's now 4 words that I feel are really part of my philosophy. So there's Excelsior. There's Ubuntu. So Excelsior is from Stan Lee. He used to always say that. It's one of the founders of Marvel Comics. And it means like ever upwards. right? Ubuntu is this idea that was sort of popularized, I believe, by Bishop Desmond Tutu. And it's this idea of I am because we are.
Yeah.
Right. So I do feel very connected to the planet. Like, I've lived in places where there are mansions with gates around them. I live, like, my building has a big gate around it, and I don't like it. Right.
Yeah.
If I have to protect myself so much because they have nothing, well, how is that success?
Yeah.
So I feel like until everyone on the planet is okay enough that I don't have to protect myself from them, I'm not really okay.
Yeah.
Right. So those are two of them. Dymaxion, which is a word that I got from Buckminster Fuller, and it's this idea of getting maximum results out of minimal effort. So what's the most efficient way to do something? And then the last one was a word that I was introduced to recently, and it's funny because my name's in it, and so, like, with the spelling of my name, so it's related to Nike, right? But my name is like Nik with an N-I-K. So Nicodonia. So it is the good feelings of anticipating success in the future.
Oh,
Right? It's like anticipating victory.
I like
So
that.
this whole horizon life thing, like, it's Nicodonia. And I just think it's so funny because, yeah, again, it's my
No,
philosophy with my name in it.
it's almost as if you made it.
Almost. I didn't, though. It's a legit word. You can look it up.
No, I feel that. I feel like I'm in a space of Nicodonia because I feel like I've been doing a lot of things, and I feel like my life is going to radically shift at any moment. I'm just like, when, I don't know when it's going to happen, but I feel like it's like right around the corner
I
that,
thought you were just in that state because of the hedonistic joy of hanging out with me for 2 hours.
I mean,
But
it is pretty fantastic.
thank you.
So, I mean, like
I
it
fished for
has,
that one pretty hard.
yeah, yeah, I feel very victorious right now.
Yeah.
So I felt, yeah, I feel lots of things when I get to.
Easy there. All right.
Oh my gosh, so many funny jokes. So many funny jokes.
So many jokes.
I love getting to like talk to people, so many different people around the world, and you connect on different levels. And some people you get to talk to and you're just like, oh my gosh, I feel like we've been friends for forever. And it's just this really beautiful thing. It's just like, I've missed you.
Aw, miss you too.
And so what I've realized is that Facebook has decided that it didn't want us to continue talking. We're still recording though, so this can still go over onto YouTube so that people
Are we
can.
no longer live on Facebook? It
We're
says
no
that we're
longer live
live.
on Facebook, so I might
It
as well
says
just
that
like.
we are. This
I know
liars.
it says that we are, but it's all black over here. It's just like none for you. Yeah, I know. It's been a little silly here for a minute. So I'm
It's
just
been
going to
silly here for a while.
I
Yeah.
know. So I said stop live streaming, but we're still recording so that
Okay.
people can catch the recording later on YouTube, and we will put all the details for your amazing program so people can find you later to ask you questions, to be part of your men's group. If you can send me the link to your men's group so that
We'll
for
do all
the
those things.
Monday Madness, we can
Just another
attach it.
manic Monday.
And that'll be fantastic. And are
And
you
for anyone still listening, we're going to reveal the meaning of life in 5, 4. No.
being your true self? That is the meaning of life.
Step 1.
Step 1, stepping forth in authentic fashion and handling your shit.
Easy.
Easy, it's totally fine. That's why
Yeah.
everybody's doing it. Why everyone in the world has a growth mindset and is working towards world peace. Every single person. What a glorious time.
Yeah.
Nik, can you tell the people of the world where they can find you in case they're listening and not having the chance yet to look at the details of this list?
Sure. So I spelled my name earlier, but I'll do it again. Nik Wood .world.
And
So
that's
that is
WOOD, not Wood, WOULD.
no. Oh, well, yeah, correct. So I only spelled the part that I thought was tricky, but you caught me. So Yeah, nikwood.world is my Instagram handle, also website. Life Athletics, we didn't talk about at all, but that's the name of my podcast. And I have lifeathletics.com as a website as well.
And then Life Athletics is something to do with athletics and sports?
It's the idea of looking at life like it's a game or a sport. And this idea that everyone in life is playing a game and winning the game that they're playing, but it might not be the one that you would choose if you were being conscious about it. And so to take responsibility for, like, I created this, is this what I want to be doing? If it's not, what game do you want to be playing? And so I've interviewed 209 was the last episode I put out. People who are winning their games in some way, and there's a huge variety. So there'll be someone that you jive with inside of that, and it can be found wherever you listen to podcasts.
That's fantastic. I think
Thanks.
I'm only up to like 84 people or something since last June.
I did 3 a week for the first while, and then it was too much to even listen to. And since my injury, which we didn't talk about at all, so that'll be weird for people, I put out like 10 episodes.
What was your injury again?
Oh, nothing major. I just broke my skull, happens.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can lean down for those that can see. Yeah, see, there's a nice long line all the way across.
Yeah, it's not from the headphones.
Mysterious.
What?
It's mysterious.
Mysterious, yeah. I thought you said be serious. I was like, what?
No, we don't do that here. Come on.
Oh. So yeah. So that's what that is. So the idea, I mean, like I want everyone to know what game they're playing, to choose, to not be playing someone else's game, unless you choose that.
Right.
And then win.
Choice is incredibly important.
Agency is huge.
It's a thing.
It is.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, everyone out there who will listen to this in the future, since apparently Facebook has decided that we should no longer be live. It has been glorious, Nik, getting to spend the last few hours with you and having deep and also playful conversations.
Those are 2 words I enjoy a lot as well. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been a delight.
You're very welcome. So everyone else that's out there, if you're still listening, you can also find me at Global Equine Affiliates, or you can go to Horsepower Empowerment Through Connection if you are seeing this on a platform that doesn't already immediately link you into that on YouTube. And yes, feel free to contact me for relationship coaching with or without horses, or if you'd like me to be on your podcast, or if you'd like to be on mine, please do reach out, because it's all about how we ripple out into the world with our light, playfulness, and wisdom.
Boom.
Boom. Until next time. See you later, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.